Okay, so as I said, I'm part of Mad Youth Organise. I thought I'd tell you a bit about myself to begin. I faced living with severe mental illness for the best part of my life. I've spent many traumatizing years in psychiatric wards and navigating a failing mental health system. I feel deeply the burden that I know many of you feel, grappling with my place in a society that values us only for our contribution to the economy, living in a time where we bear witness to genocide, climate breakdown looms, and exploitation of big tech companies makes us lonelier than ever. Although these struggles are so painfully hard, I've also begun to feel immense pride for my madness. I've been able to view mental illness as not something broken within me, but a symptom of a very, very broken system. In finding a community of young, mad people, I've been able to realize when we come together, we can find collective power, collective joy, and collective healing. And from this, there is no way we can be invisible. We can hold the corporations who put profit before our health to account. So let me introduce you to Mad Youth Organise and how it began. Today, 1 in 5 people aged 8 to 25 years old have a probable mental disorder. Hundreds of thousands of children and young people have to wait years for help that is often completely inadequate. Many are paying the price with their lives. Right now, the government is gaslighting young people. Streeting recently said that there's an overdiagnosis in mental health conditions as a justification for ripping away these payments from those experiencing mental illness. This disgusting comment shows just how out of touch our government is with the reality of our young lives. Streeting refuses to look at what is actually driving this crisis, the social conditions fueling it, the neoliberal system we all grew up in. And Mad Youth Organise formed to do just that. We are the generation that has grown up under austerity. Economic policies have stripped the welfare state to the bone and allowed unaccountable corporations to pursue business strategies that are making young people's lives harder and harder. Big tech firms are surveilling and exploiting us. Big oil and gas firms are destroying our planet and our future. Corporate employers have worked with our governments to deny us decent work and wages. Property developers and landlords have raised our rents and chucked us out of our homes. Meanwhile, there's been an explosion of private mental health care provision, meaning your only chance of getting quality, timely mental health care is paying large sums out of your own pocket. For so many young people suffocated by austerity and trapped in insecure jobs and housing, this is simply not an option. Faced with these conditions, is it any wonder so many of us are mad? So we set up Mad Youth Organise to address exactly this. We're a campaign led by young people with lived experience of mental distress and madness. We formed to challenge the corporations that are making us sick. In this call, you can hear about what we're doing, what we've done so far, and also how you can get involved. First, I'm going to hand you over to Gigi and Rosie, two of the leaders at Mad Youth Organise, to tell you about our week of action and publishing our Mad Youth Manifesto. Okay, I'm going to pass you over to Gigi first of all to introduce the manifesto.
I'll maybe just quickly jump in to say as well that if you've got questions that you'd like to ask as we go through, please do pop them in the chat. And that way we can make sure we can try and get to them towards the end of the call. So yeah, please use the chat if you've got any questions. Thanks, Haba. Back to you, Gigi and Rosie.
Hi, everyone. Can I just check that people can hear me okay? Perfect. Yeah. So firstly, I just want to apologise for the fact that you can see my headphones and I'm clearly sitting outside. I'm currently on the other side of the world, in a place called Barichara in Colombia. As I am Colombian, my mum's side of the family is Colombian. I'm here to visit family, and we've had some Wi-Fi issues. So I'm really sorry about the background, and just bear with for any distractions at the back. Just wanted to say that before I start. And I'm on my phone, so I'm going to have to be doing a little bit of moving about. But I'm really glad to be here, and I'm really excited to be here for this launch. We've been working really, really hard on this for months. It's something I'm really deeply passionate about, and it's really cool to finally see it come into the public eye. So hi, I'm Gigi. I've already been introduced to Gigi. I'm a leader with Mad Youth Organise, and I joined a few months ago. due to my own lived experience of mental distress. Much like Hannah, I've lived with quite severe mental health issues pretty much all my life and have been embedded into psychiatric systems since I was about 11 years old. It was incredibly traumatizing, as goes the story for, unfortunately, most people who go through the system. And I spent most of my life blaming myself and feeling very much like this was an individual problem. There was something just broken within me. And as I got older, I started realizing that actually it's not just me, but it's also a society that encourages bad mental health. And I never really saw that discussion being had in public or being had by charities. So that's why I really wanted to be part of this. And this is also why we started to think about how we could put this manifesto together and the rationale for the manifesto. So coming together for the first time as a group of young people with lived experience of mental illness and really highlighting the voices of the people with lived experience of mental illness. And again, most of the mainstream mental health charities aren't talking about the things that I think that we are highlighting here. So, for example, the roles of corporations, of austerity, of poverty, of racism, of ableism, of patriarchy, of these societal wide forces that are making our lives so hard and did make our lives so hard growing up. And so part of the point of this manifesto was capturing what all of this meant for us as young people and putting it together in a way that we can then publicize our voices. And so began the campaign by writing a manifesto together. So yeah, it captures our demands and a statement about our lives and also how we want things to change. So we're highlighting things like big tech and fossil fuels and private healthcare and how they hurt us. And the creation of the manifesto was based on a lot of conversations, a lot of research, a lot of collective writing. And it started off last year when we all met up at the Lake District for a weekend to think together. And it was a really, really powerful weekend. Even though I couldn't be there in person, I was online and still felt very much part of it. And we came together, we shared our stories, we built a really strong network. And we started to think together about how these structural forces that I've mentioned, such as austerity, racism, ableism, were shaping our lives, as well as how the corporations or the corporate drivers were harming us as well. So after that really powerful weekend, we continued sharing voice notes, we continued holding discussions online, we continued reading, and we began to write and think together. And so we created this Mad Youth Manifesto, which is based off all of our voices. What I loved so much about it is that it was really centered around us and our experiences. We all had a say in what the manifesto said. We were all able to edit together, and it was a really, really powerful experience. I'm going to read you just a couple of bits from the manifesto so you get a bit of an idea of the tone. It's a really, really rich piece of text. So if you haven't read it or you don't have a copy, I really, really encourage you to do so. I'm just going to ask if you could unlock that. Sorry, I'm using my partner's phone because I don't have my computer with me to read a bit of this. So yeah, as I said, this is about 80 pages. There's a lot to this, and I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs to give you an idea of the tone. We are mad youth. We've grown up under the suffocating weight of austerity. For the past 15 years, we've witnessed our lives being shaped by policies that prioritize profit over people. Over this time, madness and mental illness among young people has skyrocketed, while funding for mental health services has been slashed to the bone. The privatization of essential services has left us in a desperate situation. We can't access the care we need. This isn't just about mental health, it affects every aspect of our lives. Life expectancy is declining, the cost of living is soaring, and chronic illnesses are on the rise, symptoms of a system that is failing us. The unbearable conditions created by late-stage capitalism are driving many of us into madness. And just one more bit. We are mad youth. We are trapped in a cycle of zero-hour contracts and dead-end jobs. We've grown up watching our parents working long hours for meager pay, struggling to make ends meet. Now many of us face the same struggle. We've had to shape our lives around work that gives us no routine or consistency. We get up early and come back home late. We spend our times in workplaces where many of us are disrespected or bullied. This is even more likely if we are trans, people of color, or disabled. Oh, and I've managed to change the page. Some of us have experienced times when we've been unable to find work at all, pushing us into a cruel and bureaucratic benefit system that does not give us adequate means to live. Some of us are totally unable to find work that's genuinely accessible for our disabilities. So those are just two little bits of the opening section of the manifesto, and it really shows you, I think, how we're trying to get to the root causes of a lot of this distress, looking at it from a very societal, all-encompassing perspective, rather than just looking at it as an individual problem. So that was a very quick introduction to the manifesto. Please get in contact with us if you'd like us to send you one out. I really encourage you to have a read of it. And I'm now going to hand over to Rosie, who's going to talk a bit about the Mad Youth Organise Week of Action that launched the manifesto a few weeks ago, which was really amazing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Gigi. Hi, I am Rosie. So I'm also a leader with Mad Youth Organise. I also joined the campaign last year. And I was present at the residential weekend and contributed to the process of creating the Mad Youth Manifesto. And I guess I was sort of like Hannah and Gigi. I myself have got lived experience of severe mental illness. My madness kind of really took control and changed the shape of my life. I was actually training to be a psychologist. I was studying a doctorate in educational psychology, and I sort of very quickly pivoted from trainee psychologist to detained psychiatric patient. And that shift was really, really stark and concerning. Sort of go from training to work with children and young people who are struggling with their mental health, and then actually seeing what the treatment is like. I am a survivor of the psychiatric care system. I have been detained in NHS wards and also as an NHS patient in private wards as well, and subjected to horrendous treatment there, which still like flashbacks and things. So my experiences in hospital also like invalidating and very bling, and I've shift in the narrative in terms of the mental health crisis being a collective issue and a response to the horrendous living conditions that we're suffering through. I found really refreshing and actually like quite empowering to start looking at my madness perhaps as not something that's wrong with me, but something that's wrong with the environment that I am subjected to. So yeah, I attended the residential weekend, like I said, and that experience in itself was really empowering. It was really beautiful to come together with other young people who had had similar experiences and sort of find comfort in those shared experiences and power just in us all being in a room together talking about those experiences as well, and really feeling like our voices were being heard. And that really set the tone well for the launch week. So the next stage of the campaign was during Children's Mental Health Awareness Week. We took in a week direct action. So we had 4 corporations that we targeted. We started on outside the Priory. And at each of the actions, we did what's called a die-in. So that is basically the photos where we're laying on the floor. That was us doing the die-in. It's a method that was used a lot in the AIDS movement. So we took inspiration from that, and we did the die-ins. And then me and 2 other leaders who have had direct experiences of harm caused by the Priory group had the opportunity to kind of share our stories. I read some poetry and there was some speeches. So yeah, that was the Monday. And then the next action was outside Meta's head offices. Sorry, I'm being really distracted because my cat is scratching to try and get in the room. So yeah, Tuesday we was outside of Meta, and again we did the die-in, and then leaders who had experienced online harms and directly suffered at the hands of exploitative algorithms and harmful content online had the opportunity to share those stories as well. And then we were outside of the Home Builders Federation. That was our next corporation to protest against the poor living conditions, homelessness, unfair rents. You know, the list could go on that young people are subjected to. Some leaders shared their experiences who had unstable housing situations and how that had negatively impacted their mental health as well. And then the final action, we linked up with some other organising groups, Green New Deal Rising and Fossil Free London, and we protested outside of Shell HQ. And again, leaders shared their stories of how climate anxiety had a negative impact on their mental health. Honestly, the whole week was like, heading into the week, I kind of didn't really know what to expect. I personally have never taken part in any direct action like this before. So, I mean, there were times during the week where I was laying on the floor looking up at the sky, wondering what I was doing. But then I sort of remembered and felt that power and listened to the words of the individuals that have been directly impacted by the harms outside of these corporations. And I felt proud. I felt empowered, particularly outside the Priory. I wasn't at that specific Priory, but I had spent time as a patient at a Priory, and it felt like I was able to take back some of the control that was taken away from me while I was detained under a Priory hospital group. And yeah, so it was super empowering. It was energizing, and it felt good to be doing something, because as we kind of outline in the manifesto, as we talk about our experiences, they have been difficult, and we do struggle. And living with mental illness, I mean, currently it's so isolating. I've really been struggling and feeling the weight of the announcements to do with the benefit cuts, for example. It's exhausting, but there is power in coming together. There is power in solidarity, and we do have voices, and they do matter, and we do deserve to demand to be heard. And I definitely found the whole experience empowering. And I would say, if you are thinking about taking part and you haven't done any direct action before and you're not really sure, you know, that's kind of the boat that I was in. But I'm really glad that I did it, and I can't wait to kind of get involved in more direct actions. To be fair, it really does give you a new sort of energy to the cause, and the week was really, really fantastic. I don't know who I'm passing to now, sorry.
That's all right. Back to me. Thank you so much, Rosie. And also thank you, Gigi, for sharing both how you got involved in the campaign, and your stories, and also sharing about the manifesto and Action Week. Before we go on to talk about what comes next, do feel free to share the link to the manifesto around your friends, people who are going to be interested. We want to get this as far and wide as possible. I'm going to hand over to Diarmuid now to talk about what's going to come next for the campaign, and our plan to win. I'll say again, if you've got any questions about what's come up, about the manifesto, about what we're going to do next, just pop them in the chat box and we'll come to them at the end of the call.
Thanks so much, Hannah, and thanks Gigi and Rosie. It's awesome to hear from you, and thanks for all the supportive comments in the chat as well. It's really deeply appreciated. I'm Diarmuid. I work at Just Treatment, and we are an organisation that's focused on taking on the corporations that are causing health injustices and organising with NHS patients to win. So I am really proud to have worked with all of the Mad Youth Organised team on this new campaign. Yeah, and so you've heard a bit about the amazing actions that launched the campaign and the manifesto that we've developed as a group to kind of underpin what we're talking about. And I might ask Ella to reshare in the chat the link to that manifesto so that everybody has it. But what I'm going to talk a little bit about is what we're going to do next, and how we want to win, basically. So we kind of understand the depth of the crisis that we're in, but what are we going to do about it? And so I guess, like many of you, we've been really horrified to hear about all of the government's attacks on disabled people this week. Many of our leaders rely on disability benefits to pay for, really essential things like medication and accessible travel and care. And so cutting this essential money will put a lot of lives at risk, including the lives of people that we know and love. And we're still kind of trying to get our heads around exactly what this is all going to mean and these awful proposals, as I'm sure many of you on this call will be too. But we're forming a bit of a plan on how we can work with others to stop these changes, and also how it can give us an opportunity to push back against the government scapegoating of mentally ill people by highlighting, in particular, the corporate culprits who are helping to drive and ferment the mental health crisis. So I'm going to give you a bit of a talk through a sneak preview of the basics of our plan to stop these cuts and win an effective response to the youth mental health crisis we're witnessing. And that's ahead of our full plan to win, which is going to be published on the Just Treatment website next week. And so, like, while the scale of this crisis is really huge and these cuts can feel very hard to stop, I think we know that there are several really important facts that, when you take them together, make us very powerful. So I'm going to quickly kind of talk through a little bit of that. So here's what we know. We know there's a growing understanding that mental illness is driven by socioeconomic factors. We've actually done some polling on this internally. There's a quite significant level of public support for our analysis about, like, what is causing this problem. And for far too long, it's been seen as an individualistic issue, like something which requires only medical solutions. But not only public support, but also academics, campaigners, journalists, and grassroots groups have begun to connect the dots, I guess, between mental illness and these structural conditions, from poverty and precarity to climate breakdown. And we can use this growing consensus as a springboard to challenge the corporations that are helping to create this context and demand policy change. The second thing that we know, and this is particularly true as Just Treatment, we've been going for about 8 years now, we know that human stories are one of the most powerful tools for grabbing headlines and forcing change. We've seen it in our own work time and again, that when a decision maker comes face to face with somebody with a powerful story of how their policies have impacted their lives, it can go viral and it can become a news headline in itself that reaches millions and sets the political agenda. And this campaign, we're going to bring politicians and corporate executives face to face with young people with lived experience of mental illness, just to highlight directly how their current policies and their policy proposals are failing patients and costing lives. And we did that at a general election really effectively last year, and we've got plans to up it to another level. And we will tell the true and powerful stories of young people facing mental distress. The third thing that we know to be really critical in this is we actually know that the government's disability cuts are going to hurt millions of people. Over 4 million people receive the PIP, personal independence payment. When the government attacks people receiving disability benefits like this, it is attacking all of us. Everybody has got a relative or a friend or a neighbour or a colleague who receives PIP. And I think if we can come together, there is a movement of millions out there who can stop these cuts. And I guess the final thing that, is a really important fact that is shaping our plan to this work is that we know that the government's attacks on young people give us a real opportunity to talk about the real causes of the mental health crisis. And right now we're seeing horrible scapegoating of young, mad people by the government, by the right-wing media to justify these really brutal cuts. And the health secretary himself, Wes Streeting, claimed that mental illness was overdiagnosed without any evidence. This is the kind of like really ignorant attack that does, as frustrating as it is, it gives us an opportunity to talk about the true reasons so many young people are unwell, to talk about the corporations who are lobbying for the policies and the economic conditions that make our lives harder in order to increase their profits. So we can shine a light on the real reasons so many young people are experiencing this and provide some credible alternative to the cuts, including taxing the corporate culprits for the harms that they are causing. And so, yeah, I would say those 4 facts make us very, very powerful, and it gives us leverage. And that can make politicians and corporations vulnerable to the pressure we as a collective can build. And it's our job to build that pressure and force them to act. So I want to say a few things about our plan to do that. So if we think about these crucial facts, there are really clear tools and tactics that do have the power to challenge corporations, challenge the government, and force policy change. So, firstly, we will identify really powerful stories and support patients to share them. We already are working with a group of young people who've been seriously impacted by mental illness, and we're going to grow that group. Allow them to talk about how a lack of access to appropriate care impacts them, and the disability cuts will harm them and their families. And we will train those young people to speak confidently about their stories and demand solutions to the collective challenges they're facing. Secondly, we will target political and corporate culprits. Why can't I say that word? We will target political and corporate culprits with creative direct action and really mass digital actions. So in really close coordination with allied groups, we're going to be relentlessly exposing how the government's disability cuts will kill young people like us. And we're going to be calling that out. We're going to shine a spotlight on corporations, drawing on the direct actions we did to launch this campaign, and setting out a series of further escalatory actions that really focus blame where it should be and amplifies the young people's patient stories to show where the genuine effective alternative to making these attacks and these cuts on their benefits. Thirdly, we're going to use the press and the social media to amplify our impact by using really great social media video content. We can amplify young people's patient stories, which spark debate, and shift the public conversation around these cuts so people recognize that mental illness is not an individual medical issue, but it's a structural one which is fueled by corporations, and the solutions of which will only lie with policies that tackle those structural drivers and those corporate culprits. And fourth, finally, we're going to build allies in Parliament and intervene in the legislative processes that are defining young people's lives. We know that there are many MPs within the Labour Party who are horrified by what the leadership is doing, and we will gain the backing of these politicians, not just from Labour, but from across multiple political parties. And we're going to work with them and other allies to stop the cuts. We're also going to be using opportunities like the mental health bill, which is passing through Parliament as well, to build an alliance of politicians that are really willing to stand up to demand action focused on the corporations causing this mental health crisis, demanding a tax on their profits to try and fund the kind of care that young people desperately need, along with a load of other things that we haven't thought of yet and that we hopefully will learn from you and the others that are going to join us in this fight. And that's it. As Just Treatment, we've used these tactics time and again in a way that's really proven effective. We have forced governments to change their policies. We have forced corporations to back down. And we think that if we can do this together, we can build that collective power to force change on this issue as well. And by working as one part of the wider disability justice movement, I think we can believe that we can collectively stop these cuts. So thanks so much for your time.
Amazing. Thank you, Dermot. Yeah, I just wanted to speak a bit more to the government's horrific cuts that we've seen unfolding over the last week to the disability benefits. And as Dimon mentioned, how we're going to plan to start challenging these immediately. As so many of you have shared really heartbreaking stories in the chat, and I know that it affects everyone we know, and it affects me as well. The cutting of this essential money is going to put so many of our lives at risk. For me and so many, PIP has been a lifeline and still is. These small amounts of money that we receive, these are just going to help towards our medication, our travel. The government is justifying their cuts by attacking those who experience madness. And this furthers the stigma and the shame that many of us, including myself, experience about receiving PIP and receiving these benefits. And this means it's more important than ever to stand together in solidarity as proud, mad activists. So at this critical moment, Mad Youth Organise are going to start focusing on standing with other disability rights groups against these cuts and make it a priority to mobilise around it. On Tuesday, the 6th of May, we plan to be at Westminster holding a Mad Youth Organise event hosted by the MP Nadia Whittam. Nadia is a young person herself who has experienced mental illness. Here, leaders such as myself and Gigi and Rosie are going to come together, and we're going to share with MPs how these cuts to PIP and these welfare benefits are going to have direct and devastating impacts on our lives. So what we need you to do is, we need as many MPs as possible to attend. So we need you to write to your MP, send them a link to the manifesto, and invite them to come to this crucial event. To do this, I think there's going to be a link put in the chat in a moment, and that's a link to sign up to the campaign. And the next couple of days, you'll receive an update from us on how to contact your MP and invite them along. Thank you.
Ace. Thank you so much, Hannah. So yeah, I think we've got a little bit of time now to to talk about any questions that people have got, to try and answer them. And I think if you haven't already posted a question in the chat, please do so. It'd be great. I think there's a few that have come in already, and we'll try to address them. I think one that's there right in front of me is from Eileen. So just the question around is the primary objective in this work to challenge the cuts? And I'll maybe start to answer, and then if Hannah or Rosie or anybody else wants to come in, you can. But I think this campaign has been many years in the making, and I think we've really understood that the kind of youth mental health crisis, there is a gap, I guess, in terms of organising to challenge the real, true underlying causes of it. And so the campaign itself was designed to win really transformative change in the way that government thinks about the youth mental health crisis and the action that they're taking to target the corporations that are responsible for it. But in this moment, we are it's impossible to ignore the very immediate attacks that the government is making on the young people that are involved in this campaign and who are the focus of our efforts. And it also, I think, really clearly illustrates these cuts really clearly illustrate just how wrong the government's thinking is about this problem and what we can do to address it. So I think for the next few months at least, we'll be working really clearly as a priority to push back on the cuts to PIP, because we know what an outsized impact it will have on the well-being and health of young people. But the campaign will last well beyond that fight, because it's not just about stopping these benefit cuts. There is a whole range of changes that need to be made in the way that youth mental health is addressed within our society, within our economy, within government policy, that we can do more to fix. And it's going to take a while to do that. So this is just, I guess, our first priority action, and there will be more and more to come on much broader issues beyond this. Hannah, do you want to come in on that? Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's great, Dermot. Thank you.
Nice. And there's another question that came in about organising, whether this is an England focused campaign or whether this is something that is going to be like, across the rest of the UK region. So Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. Well, I'm currently in Wales. I grew up in Northern Ireland. Like, I think, yeah, obviously some of the government policies, particularly around PIP, will have particular impact in England, but the campaign focus is UK wide, and I think there are things that we'll be trying to do to organise right the way across all four nations, and yeah, trying to see political leadership and hold corporations to account right the way across the country. So yeah, we will be trying to organise as Mad Youth right the way across the UK. If anybody else wants to chip in on this, please do. And I should say as well, we do already have some of the young leaders involved in the Mad Youth Organise campaign who are from other parts of the UK. It's not an England only enterprise. So yeah, we're really keen to expand it.
David, sorry, I can
Yes,
jump in on that one as well.
please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hope from the Just Treatment team. I've just been doing some tech support mainly, but I thought I'd just also jump in on the questions as well and say, obviously, Mad Youth Organise is a very new campaign, and so we're kind of only just getting started, really. I think we have very, very big ambitions for this like campaign to go, to kind of like spread far and wide. And so I think building up, contacts and bringing people on board who are based in sort of all different parts of the UK would be like really great. And I think we're certainly, even if we're not ready for it right now, we definitely have ambitions to create resources and infrastructure to be able to provide to activists and young people in all of the four nations to be able to kind of do some of this work and kind of decentralize it a bit. So we're not there yet, but that definitely is part of our plan, and we're only just getting started. So I just wanted to add that to that question.
Ace, while you're unmuted, Hope, do you want to speak about? I think there was a question there about the platforms that we're organising on, and
Yes, I'm presuming that's a question about sort of like digital platforms and things like that, like how we organize.
well, I think answer that one, and if whoever asked the question was getting at something else, please do post again to clarify in the chat. But yeah, if you can answer on that angle, that would be great to start with.
Great. So yeah, so Just Treatment is on pretty much all the social media. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. I think that's all of them. Yes. Oh, and we are still on X, although don't know how much longer we will be, but we're still on there. And also Mad Youth Organise has its own kind of like campaign Instagram account as well. Maybe Ella, if you're there, you could post a link in the chat for people that aren't already following us. So that's a really great way to like keep up to date on sort of the latest news and events. The best way is to join, and if the link could be reshared, to sign up to the kind of campaign page on Action Network. That means that you'll get all of like the latest emails about the campaign. We'll share, ways to get involved. Yeah, and I think that's the main platforms we're on at the moment. So hopefully that helps to answer the question.
Ace, thanks so much, Hope. A couple of the questions that people have posted. So, yeah, have we had any responses from MPs or corporations to the launch and to the manifesto? And yeah, we have. We actually, like Nadia Whittam and also Carla Denyer, so Labour MP and the Green MP, both reviewed the manifesto, and we've spoken to them about the campaign and our demands, and they're both supportive, and they help to like provide supportive quotes for the launch and the week of action. And so yeah, we've also started to reach out now as well to other MPs, but we're right at the start of that. And I think everything that Just Treatment tries to do, we try to do it through groups of people that are affected. And so we as a staff team haven't spent a load of time trying to like build a parliamentary relationship. We really believe that we can do that most effectively by helping others who can speak about their personal experiences of this issue to do that themselves. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing in the future is like putting together like letters and packs and support to help everybody that wants to get involved, that has been impacted by this issue, to do that parliamentary outreach themselves. So yeah, as Hope said, it's really early days, and I think we're still thinking through how we kind of rethink all of our campaign plans in light of this kind of like attack on PIP. But we will be, do sign up, and there will be more and more kind of details about what our campaign plans are, shared through our mailing list and on our website, and through our social channels, that'll give more and more opportunities for people to contribute in the days and weeks ahead. There was another question. So and just to say as well, we also hilariously had one reply back from the Home Builders Federation, out of the 4 corporations that we targeted in that launch, and they tried to explain to them that actually they're absolutely on our side, and really they're the good guys. Which, if you actually look at the things that they've been lobbying for within government, is clearly not the truth. But yeah, I think we will be continuing to build pressure on those corporations. But yeah, it's going to be, for the near term at least, a lot of focus on the government and this PIP's agenda, because I think it does tell a broader story about the complete wrong-headed attitude that the government has to this, that allows corporations to get away with this and like persistently fails young people. Yeah. Other questions that people have got, I'm just kind of scrolling through to make sure I pick them up. Yeah, like I think
There's a question about timelines, Dermot.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that one, Hope? Just since you're
I can give it a go. And other people, to be honest, in the call might well know better than me. And actually, this is a very live issue. It's only just been announced, and there's a lot of like still unanswered questions about exactly how this is going to happen. The government have, signaled that there will be certain changes. For example, the change to the PIP scoring is not going to be put into effect until apparently November 2026, but it's still quite unclear about, obviously the kind of like legislation that might dictate those changes. We very much expect to be kind of coming sooner than that. There's also a question mark around which of the changes the government will have to bring through primary legislation, which means that it will come through Parliament and there will be votes, and which changes they can make without that. My limited understanding from speaking to allies in Parliament is that at least some of the changes will have to be brought through primary legislation. That will be a really interesting opportunity, because I think the government will be quite scared that they will potentially face a really big rebellion. The question will be, how big will the rebellion be? But we know that there are a lot of politicians across the whole of Parliament, but including many Labour MPs, who are deeply, deeply uncomfortable with what the leadership are doing. And who maybe wouldn't usually stick their head above the parapet, but actually on this issue might be willing to, because they know how controversial it is. So yeah, they've stated, just looking at an article now, that they intend to bring forward legislation in this session of Parliament, which ends on the 21st of July. So yeah, we've heard that basically they are expecting some votes in May. So yeah, obviously our event with MPs, that was the soonest we could get it, basically, like right at the start of May. So hopefully that will come at a really crucial time. But yeah, the next month to 6 weeks is definitely a really vital window for campaigning.
Thanks so much, Hope. Yeah, and I think I've got another comment as well in the chat, just about like I guess it's a reflection of like just how many problems we're facing right now. There are issues with like capacity within inpatient care. There's waiting list issues. There's there's challenges around quality of care that GPs can offer. In terms of like where our focus is going to be, I think we're going, like, it is quite challenging, because I think for many people, the list of problems and the list of stuff that isn't working well enough is really, really long. And I would say, like, from our perspective, at least, I think we try to do 2 things, I guess. We try to center what we're doing as much as possible on the people that we're working with, and like take our lead from their lived experience, their understanding of how these issues have played out for them. But then, rather than keeping it on an individualistic level, pivot from that to talk about these bigger issues that are driving it. And I think within the work that we've done so far and the manifesto that's been written so far, we've talked a lot. There's a lot of analysis about like how things are not working, like why we're in this mess, the corporations that are responsible for it. And I think we want to see solutions that are at that systemic level as well. And so we will be talking about, yeah, things like taxation on corporations at a level that funds all of the rest of the care that needs to happen. We are talking about challenging the kinds of levels of power that corporations can generate through monopolies and how that translates into their kind of capture of politicians and like corruption of the political process. So a lot of those kind of like trying to do those two things, those smaller scale, personal, individual kind of like stories of injustice linked to the bigger systemic drivers of that. And so we will then also, the plan is later in the campaign to start doing something that's slightly more positively framed, that's thinking about like, particularly comes from all of the young people that are involved in this work, like what is our vision for what great mental health should be? Like, what is our vision for a society that is doing this right instead of the society that is doing it so wrong that we see right now? And so I think that will be part of the time as well, where we're able to like describe and articulate a completely alternative environment and approach and culture and ethos to this that will sit in quite stark contrast to all the things that we can see today that aren't working. So yeah, please do keep posting stuff in the chat. Like there are people on this call who will have knowledge about some of these things that we don't have right now. Like the more we can share that, the more we can learn from allies, the better. But yeah, just to kind of close up the Q&A session, and I'll pass back to Hannah to close out. But just to say hello at Just Treatment, maybe Ella can post our email address in the chat if you haven't had a question answered, or if there's stuff that's come up that you'd like to kind of like, you know, have a longer conversation with us about, please do get in touch. We're really keen. We are in learning mode. We're in kind of like campaign strategizing mode. We're going to, there's a lot more work that needs to be done to like define everything that we need to be doing over the next few months around the PIP response. And then obviously the Mad Youth Organise campaign beyond that. But thanks so much for a really fruitful conversation. It's really great to hear from you all, and I'll pass back to Hannah to close up.
Thank you. Thanks, Dermot. So yeah, that just about brings us to the end of the call. I just want to say thank you so much to Gigi and Rosie, and if Gigi's still here, but to Gigi and Rosie for their inspiring contributions and sharing so openly about how they've experienced the mental health system and how they've ended up in Mad Youth Organise. Thanks, Dimid, for the plan to win and the questions, and Hope and Anna for helping with the call as well. And thanks everyone for joining us tonight, especially for spending your evening on a Zoom call. And thanks for your great questions and your enthusiasm for getting involved in this really critical strategy at this really important point in time. I know so many of you have your own experiences of lived experience of mental illness and are going to be deeply impacted by the cuts. But I do want to echo what I said earlier, that when we come together, we can find collective power, we can find collective healing, and we can find collective joy. And from that, there is no way that we can be invisible. We're going to be too loud, too disruptive. There'll be too much joy, and we can hold these corporations who are putting profit before our health to account. So please do share the manifesto. I feel like they're all on the screen now, but please do share the manifesto, send it to campaign. You can share your story as well by, I think, scanning that, but also on our website about your experience of mental illness and madness. And there's also one to make a donation as well. But I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening.